Hello, welcome back. It's Real American Brian and Taylor from Taylor Talks Comics. And we're going to talk about comics that we read. So stick around and find out what we read this month.
Read comics with this guy. I can see with my eyes. Take a look in a comic book, a reading rainbow.
Hey, Taylor, you want to go first and show us something that you read?
Sure. So longtime viewers will know that I've had this kick of one manga, one Batman per month. I broke it this month.
Oh, no.
No manga, no Batman. But I have plenty of other books that I read and good ones that I'd recommend. This one is Asterios Polyp. This is by David Mazzucchelli. I think on the first video we did, I did a Batman Year One, same artist. And this is an amazing masterclass of comics. And I think might be my new gateway comic to hand to new comic book readers.
Oh, wow.
I think it's a perfect showcase of what the medium of comics can do. I think David Mazzucchelli, it's kind of mind-blowing that David Mazzucchelli did Batman Year One and Daredevil Born Again, two of the best looking superhero comics ever, and then he was able to do what he did with this one. But Asterios Polyp is the story of the title character, Asterios Polyp. He is a paper architect. So I guess what that means is that he's an architect that is recognized by winning awards for his design, but none of his designs have ever been made. So he's never actually achieved the building of a making of a building. And he's also kind of a cantankerous, kind of a jerk. And he hangs out with the elite of the elite class. He's always rubbing elbows with the rich. But in the beginning of the story, you find out that his apartment is struck by lightning and it catches on fire and he loses everything he has. So now you see him, and then also you'll find out that he is also going through a split with his partner at the time. So he's really at the rock bottom of his life. He's now rubbing elbows with the the bums of the streets and stuff like that. So he's no longer with the elite. So he's kind of been humbled, and the whole story is kind of about him. There's lots of flashbacks and whatnot of him re-engaging with the times of his life where he was rubbing elbows with the elite, and then also you see that paralleled with his new life where he's at rock bottom and whatnot. It's kind of a not a coming of age story because he's an older guy, but more of an arc of a character growing and developing as a human, with an ending that's quite a fabulous ending. I will say. I don't want to spoil it for you, obviously. But the artwork alone and the lettering, because David Mazzucchelli does everything. He does lettering, coloring, writing, pencils, everything. But the panel layouts are just amazing. The way he does the lettering is amazing. The way the story is told is amazing. So I think if you were to give this to a new comic book reader, they would have a whole new impression of what comic books could be. Because I feel like a lot of times people that don't read comics are just that's the superhero stuff, whatever. This would be give a huge impression of what this medium can do. So it's one of my best reads of the year for sure. I was so glad that I finally read it, and just an amazing story.
So that's the complete story in that?
All one and done. It's a graphic novel. It was pitched as David Mazzucchelli's first graphic novel that he ever did.
So I like that you said this is one of your best reads of the year so far, because later on I have what I know is my best read of the year so far.
So it's a good month for us then.
It was a good month, apparently. So my first one is, we haven't done any single issues in a little while, and that's what I brought. The new Planet of the Apes series from Marvel. I kind of wanted to put a little bit of a spotlight on this, because I want more people to go out and buy it, because I love it. Not only because I love Planet of the Apes, but I think this is just really well done. I think I don't know, it takes place in, if you liked any of the last three newest movies, this takes place in that same world and kind of builds off everything that's told in that. So if you liked those, then, and you like comics, you should go out and buy these. There's only 3 issues out right now, so it should be pretty easy to track them down. When I read the first issue, it kind of felt like, okay, you're introducing, just in case someone didn't see the movies, we're introducing the world and kind of getting caught up. So it wasn't really that exciting. I was like, okay, it's a licensed book and that's what we're going to do. But then with the next 2 issues, it really started to develop quite a bit of a story, and they're doing a lot of world building and character building in it. And really, it's a much slower paced story than I would normally expect from one of the big 2 comic companies. It's not being written for the trade at all. It definitely feels like, we're being introduced to a very long tail here. And sometimes that's not very exciting to do, have like a slow character building story. But the way it's done in here, they're telling you 2 different stories at the same time that are going to interact at some point that aren't yet. And so that kind of keeps it fresh and kind of keeps some cool things happening there. But I highly recommend this book. I want it to be successful, so I want people to go out and give it a chance. Because I do have my concerns with Marvel doing Apes books after the Omni. I think they kind of screwed that up a little bit, and I want sales numbers to look good, so they keep doing Ape books.
I agree with that notion. I think they did kind of screw up I think we talked about that before. Yeah. The price point and stuff. It wasn't really a good gateway price point for people that might want to try out Apes comics. So this is only 3 issues in, so they haven't got to that first trade yet.
No, not yet. But I mean, the way it's written, if they did a trade, it would still feel like that's not like a complete arc.
Okay.
Like, I can't see how they could wrap up even like one story in a trade.
So do you feel like you're getting enough meat in each issue or are you just like, do you think this would be better read as like an omnibus, like a whole thing?
I think, yes. Well, I think that's true for most books I like.
Yeah.
They're going to be better read as an omni. But definitely the way this is being done and how it does feel like a very slow build is probably going to be better as an omni. But the way it's holding my attention now is like having those 2 different stories going at the same time. Like as soon as like the pacing of one starts slowing down a little bit, we switch to the other one.
Yeah.
So I think
is the same artist doing both parts?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not like 2 separate stories in the book. It's just like
2 sides of the coin or whatever.
Yeah. And they haven't interacted yet, but it's going to. Like it's just very obvious that this is all going to come together. But yeah, I'm really loving it a lot, and I can't wait to read more.
That's awesome. I like the idea of them adding to the licensed story. Like that's what I love about a lot of the early Aliens and Predator comics. Like licensed comics, I think can be really cool if they're not just straight adaptations. So
yeah, and the first issue of this kind of concerned me because I thought that's what it was going to be. Like, oh, we're going to do something. But it was really just establishing, hey, we're using this universe. If you don't know, here's a quick intro of everything that's happened in these 3 movies.
And I wish they'd advertise that as such. I wish they would advertise, here's these movies that we have in our property now. Here's some comics that add to the movies. And then...
Well, and Disney has the new movie that'll be coming out next year, I believe. And that same story or the same universe. So there's no reason not to like connect those or have this be the bridge between movie 3 and movie 4 that's coming.
Awesome.
But it does have the 20th century. I think this was the first book with the 20th century, whatever we'll call it.
Imprint.
Masthead. Imprint.
Yeah. Which have they now subsequently put that on the Predator and Aliens comics?
I believe so.
Yeah. So cool. So the next one I have to talk about is Deadly Class, which, dare I say, one of my favorite reads of the year. So this is a comic book that I knew I was going to love. This came out a long, long time ago, but it just finally wrapped up. The whole series finally wrapped up last year. And I've been putting it off and putting it off. I think it's because I wanted to wait until it was finished. But like I said, I knew I was going to love it because everything that's in like the soup of what makes this book are things that I enjoy. So it's kind of also hesitant that I was like, maybe it won't pay off for me and be as good as I expect it to be. But it's written by Rick Remender, who already has like a lot of nihilistic themes in his writing that I love. Like that kind of like, what does it matter? We're all going to die one day anyways kind of things. Which I'm not a nihilistic person, but sometimes you get down and you feel that way. But this book has a lot of teenage melodrama, which I love too. And it takes place in the 80s and all has like punk rock themes all throughout it. So those are all things that I love in comics and just in general. So I knew I was going to love this book. But I was also hesitant that maybe it wouldn't pay off. Maybe it's like all these things that I like, but it's going to be like, make me roll my eyes or something. But it did pay off. It was amazing. So the story of it is that it does take place in the 80s, like I said. And it's these kids that you can see on the front. And this it looks like a very album cover kind of front cover there. Wes Craig is the artist. Amazing work in this. but all these kids go to an assassin school. It's like this very clandestine, undercover school that teaches people how to become assassins one day. So you have, and through the school, you get all of the normal hijinks you get in school, of like the cliques. You get the jocks and the preps and the rich people and the punks and the goth kids and all that stuff. And then some of the gangster kids too. So you get kind of this mashup of all those cliques, and you get all the drama that fills in between that. You find out a lot of why these kids are being sent here to be assassins. Some of them are from like the elite Russians that are already, the parents are assassins, so they're sending the kids to learn how to carry on the family name. But some of them, like the main character here, he is just like a homeless kid who lost his parents, and they find out, and they kind of bring him in. Like, he has no reason why he should become an assassin other than they witness him putting his potential skills to work, if you will. But in the midst of all that, you get a lot of teenage melodrama, a lot of love triangles, a lot of kids doing mischievous things, which is funny. Even though they're in assassin school, they're still breaking the rules of what they can do and whatnot. So, and then also the two of the main characters here, they work at a comic book shop, which is fun because then you get a lot of. And I haven't looked up to make sure the dates line up and whatnot, but they do a good job of like putting you in that place, because all the comics are talking about are from like the 1980s and stuff. So it's fun to see like little Easter eggs in the background of like, oh, there's Watchmen, there's Akira, there's The Dark Knight and whatnot. So Dark Knight Returns. But it's just a fun book filled with like those kinds of Easter eggs if you're into like 80s culture. It's got a lot of punk rock stuff, like I said, assassin school, teenage melodrama, nihilistic themes. If any of that interests you, I would highly recommend this. But yeah, and then it's also got the caveat that there's a lot of twists and turns, and characters might not live as long as you expect they would. So not to spoil much, but just throw that out there a little bit. Don't tie yourself in emotionally to any of these characters, because you don't know how long they'll last. There is a lot of death involved in this, but this is the first of the 4 deluxe hardcovers. The 4th one just came out, which is why I finally started reading this, because I had the first 3 volumes. I was kind of waiting for the 4th one to come out. That's my last excuse, because I wanted to read it as a whole, and I have to like read the 3 and then wait a year for the last one to come out. But it is all done now. 4 hardcovers.
Those are pretty good sized hardcovers too.
Yeah, these are like the absolute sized, but this is how Rick Remender publishes all his materials in these Remender sized hardcovers for Image. And this year is actually a good time to jump on to Rick Remender's comics, because all of his comics for Image are going to be re-released or reprinted in these hardcovers this year. So like Seven to Eternity came out, Tokyo Ghost came back out. I think I talked about that on an earlier episode. And then like Black Science is finally getting reprinted. So a lot of his books are being reprinted, and they look nice on the shelf because they're all the same size.
Well, that sounds pretty cool. My next book is Middle West. So I'm a big Scotty Young fan, but I believe this is the first thing from Scotty Young as a writer that I've ever read. I haven't read I Hate Fairyland or the Deadpool books he's done or anything else he's written. But I've read this. The artwork does kind of feel like it's in that same genre as Scotty Young, which is kind of neat. You could almost be fooled into thinking that he may have done it. It reminds me of like the Legend of the Spider Clan art that he did a little bit, not exactly, but so the artist is Jorge Corona. But I got this book, and one of the things that I find I get into trouble with a lot is I just assume things about books. So I bought this without doing any research and assumed that this was the whole story.
Oh,
And I was wrong. But reading it, I loved it. It is a great, I don't want to say too much about the story, but it is like this child that has a lot of issues with his parents, or both parents. But he ends up going on a journey that kind of reminds me of like an old school fairy tales type story, like a Wizard of Oz or Alice in Wonderland, where he keeps running into these new characters, and some are helping him on his journey, some are not helping him, but they kind of like come and go through the different phases of the journey. I loved it. I had a blast reading it, and then I got to the end and I was like, that doesn't feel like an ending. And that's because it's not. There's this is the first 6 issues, and there were 18. So I'm currently looking for the complete collection. That unfortunately looks like it's a little pricey, but not too crazy.
The hardcover?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll put a compendium out too because it's Image and that's what they like to do if you're wanting that. But it's 3 trade paperbacks, I believe.
Yeah. Yep. So 3 trades, or they already have a soft cover complete collection, and then they have the hardcovers.
Oh, okay. So I only read the first few issues of this, and I read it digitally. There's no other reason I didn't read it other than that it was digitally, and I don't love digital reading. But I did have the same impression that it was kind of like Wizard of Oz, which is interesting because Scotty Young worked on the Marvel Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I kind of drew that connection as well. Like as I was reading, I was like, oh, well, Scotty Young. I don't know the timing. Maybe he just came off the Oz book and still had some.
I think there's a pretty wide gap between the two. He might have been like beginning to write the story, maybe, and he was looking to squeeze it into all his work, maybe. But
yeah, definitely. I mean, there's it's a lot more than just like a simple fairy tale. There's like some serious issues and stuff going on there, and some of them hit a little too close to home for me.
And this team worked on another book after this. Jorge Corona drew the work for Scotty Young's writing. I forget what it's called. It's escaping me, but it was just a mini series too. I think. I don't know. Does it say on the back there? No, it doesn't. But after this, they came off this and wrote it's a completely different story. It has nothing to do with this, but it was like a 6-issue miniseries. So if you like that team, maybe go on to whatever the book is called. I don't know what it's called.
Do your research before you buy a book, assuming things
right. So up next, I have The Rocketeer and this beautiful slipcase that IDW finally reprinted. This is a book that I've been wanting for a long, long time. It's been super out of print, and they finally reprinted it. Have you read this before?
I have not.
Have you seen the movie?
I have.
Okay, I was going to say, I thought you'd seen the movie. Because I feel like we watched it as kids together. I don't know. But I also love that the movie, too, had the first Avenger Captain America movie had the same director, Joe Johnston. So they took a lot of the same pulpy World War II stuff into the next one. But anyways, this is a comic, and the movie was based on this. This is where The Rocketeer was originally created by Dave Stevens, who was an amazing artist, who died too young. He died in his late 40s, I think. But he was just a master artist, and you'll see that in here. Like the end papers alone are just incredible. Oh, sorry, that's a little. The end papers alone are just show you off the great artwork of his and his great illustration. But he's also a slow artist, so he was never known for a big long run of comics and whatnot because he just put so much detail and work into it. And you learn a lot about that in here because he had a few artists kind of help him with certain pages, like big name artists like Art Adams, Jaime Hernandez. Dave Stevens was definitely a cartoonist. All the big name cartoonists loved Dave Stevens. But the way the story started was that the publisher for Eclipse Comics, I believe, needed a backup strip for Star Slayer magazine. And they went to Dave Stevens and says, can you give us 2 6-page stories for the next 2 issues of Star Slayer? And he's like, sure, yeah. So he came up with this Rocketeer character. And there's some differences from the movie, but for the most part, if you've seen the movie, you really enjoy this comic. I think the only thing is that it fleshes out the characters a little bit more. But it's about Cliff Secord is the Rocketeer. And he does air shows where he does those airplane shows where they do tricks and stuff and spin around and they have a little play that goes along with it. But he's trying to up his game to make more money because him and his girlfriend, who happens to be Betty Page, there's a lot of old school pulp influences in here of that era. So Betty Page is his girlfriend. And he's trying to make more money and impress her and do all these things. He comes across this rocket jetpack. He's like, this is going to be the air show of all air shows. But what he doesn't realize is that rocket jetpack is in the midst of a kind of a battle between Nazis and this maybe other clandestine group that you don't quite know who they're from or what side they're on, Americans or Nazis or what have you. So there's all this it's very pulpy, in the fact that there's twists and turns and double agents and spies mixed in there, and Cliff is just trying to make money and be part of this cool air show. But then he has his jetpack, and then he realizes what he is in the middle of with this fight between the Nazis and this other group and whatnot. So he realizes the responsibility that he now has with this jetpack, that he can't just give it up, even though Betty Page is trying to just give it up and let's move on with their lives. But he's like, but I can't. I have a responsibility. If I give it to them, then they're going to win the war and that kind of thing. So it's really great. The characters, they're all flawed. There's no like Superman where there's like this one guy that's super good in all things. Like Cliff Secord is definitely not your pure Boy Scout kind of character. Like he's very much flawed in his morals and motivations and whatnot. But there's all kinds of twists and turns. The artwork is just amazing throughout the whole thing. And this book, the package of it, has a whole like sketchbook in the back and fold out pages even, giving you the whole history of Dave Stevens making this. Like I said, Dave Stevens didn't do a lot of comic book work, but he kept everything, all the sketches and any sort of work that he did. And this has been released in artist editions as well, because he kept all that work. It's cool, all the cool stuff that goes along with that. But it's a really fun story, and it's also kind of a cool little historical comic book document, if you will.
Did I thought there was an IDW title that was like Betty Page as the Rocketeer or something that came out not too long ago, the last 5-6 years.
Potentially. There has been a lot more Rocketeer comics that have come out since then, which I want to read. One of them in particular, Chris Samney did the artwork for it, and Mark Waid did the writing for it. That one sounds amazing because Chris Samney, his artwork is, it's not as, I don't want to say equally as good, but it's really good. Dave Stevens is a master. But Betty Page, I think Dynamite has a license to that character.
That's what it was.
So I know there's a lot of Betty Page comics with Dynamite, but yeah, this is IDW, and they finally reprinted this. And I highly recommend anybody pick it up. It's also been released in paperbacks if you want a more affordable format. But I think this one's worth it because it has all the cool stuff in the back that shows you how Dave Stevens made the comic.
And not just being pulpy, which it definitely is. It leans into that very heavily, but it feels like a radio drama come to life as well.
Yes, absolutely. It definitely has that effect to it. And Dave Stevens, you can tell he's a fan of the pulps and the radio dramas and that kind of era of fictional content because that's all like, I keep saying this, but in the soup of what this comic is, all that plays into it. And I'm sure there's Easter eggs that I didn't even pick up on of characters throughout that, but Betty Page was obviously one of them because she was very popular during that era. And there's even a thing in here where I guess the Rocketeer comic book gave Betty Page kind of a resurgence in fandom because she's a little bit older when this comic came out. But like, then she started going to conventions and stuff because this new fandom found her and they were like, became fans of Betty Page because of this comic book, which is kind of interesting. So The Rocketeer.
The Rocketeer. My next book is a larger size. It's a Treasury edition. Moon Knight, Black, White, and Blood. So this is the first of the Black, White, and Blood series that I've read. I picked it up because I read the Jeff Lemire Moon Knight complete collection last year and loved it. So when this came out, I was like, hey, that sounds like it's going to look super cool. And I'm interested in the character now after reading that. As an anthology with shorter stories and stuff, I don't think it worked as well. All the artwork was amazing and beautiful, but didn't really feel, I don't know, maybe coming off the Jeff Lemire stuff and then going into this may have been a mistake because I don't feel like everyone kind of had a grasp on the character as well as Jeff did. So some of these stories kind of fell flat for me or felt kind of goofy, but the artwork looked amazing throughout the whole book, and like the black, white, and red works very well for Moon Knight. And it's another one of the awesome Treasury editions with the soft slash.
Was there a favorite story that came out of it or anything?
Nothing that really stands out in my mind too much. A Spider-Man popped up in one, and I didn't really feel like that was necessary. Yeah, not really.
Does it take place, or are you even aware, because I don't think you've read a lot of the old Moon Knight and stuff, but does it take place in like different eras? Like, does each strip take place?
Yeah, each story kind of takes place at different time, at different points in the timeline.
Okay. Was that jarring as far as like you not knowing exactly when it took place? And
not too much, because I mean they're very obviously different stories. There's different artists, different writer on each one, so it's okay. We're definitely transitioning into something different now. It's not continuing on from the previous story.
Yeah,
and they were all wrapped up. As a story starts, story is over, and we move on to the next one.
Because I absolutely love this concept. I've read the Carnage and the Deadpool of the Black, White, and Blood series. The Carnage one was left a lot to be desired, but I think a lot of that was because we were in the midst of like the Donny Cates Venom series, and I think a lot of the artists and writers that worked on the strips for Black, White, and Blood Carnage wanted to play in that playground, and I haven't read that, so a lot of that was kind of missing for me.
I think I would almost rather have like one team do the whole series rather than have
Really?
it be an anthology. Yeah.
I kind of love the idea of it being an anthology, and I'll tell you why. Because the Deadpool one was one of my best reads of that year that I read it, because they had so many cool cartoonists working on it that I love. Like Dina Warren Johnson did a strip, Mike Allred did a strip, Stan Sakai did a strip, and every issue had one of my favorite artists working, which those three were named, and then I forget who the other one was. I don't know, but each issue had one of the artists that I love, and I was like, dang. Oh, James Stocco, that's who it was. And so I just wanted to see their artwork, and I think it's more of an artwork thing. I don't think the stories were the most amazing stories I've ever read, but they're fun, and it's fun to read because each issue has an 8-page strip, 3 different 8-page strips from different people.
Well, and you're saying it being an artwork thing. That's like, having read this now, that's how I look at it on my shelf. Like, this is an art book.
Yeah,
the art was awesome throughout the entire book, but the stories and stuff just left.
One name on here that is interesting to me is Jonathan Hickman. I can't conceive him writing an 8-page strip story, because he's such. Everything I've read from him is so like the long game. Like you have to read 2 omnibuses to get the full story. Which when you finish the second omnibus, it all ties together very nicely. He's a very great writer, but I can't see him working with just 8 pages. It seems interesting.
Yeah.
But the Carnage one had left a lot to be desired. The Deadpool one is great, so I want to try more of these out. But
yeah, I think I may give the Elektra a try.
What about Darth Vader? That one's the newest one.
Darth Vader. Well, Darth Vader, I thought it was strange that they named it Black, White, and Red instead of Blood.
Oh, they did.
Because of the lightsaber, I guess.
Okay.
Lack of blood. I don't know. I thought that was kind of strange. Like, why? Just call it Blood.
Yeah,
it's fine.
And then the next one is going to be Marvel Zombies, which could be interesting.
Oh, well, that would be really cool.
I think there's a Wolverine one. That's the only one we haven't mentioned yet. But, and it would be cool because these treasure editions are real nice to have the whole set on your shelf. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole yet of trying to collect them all, because I feel like I would, and then I would keep them all, because even if I didn't enjoy them, because they look nice on the shelf. But the treasure editions are beautiful. I love them. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this format. Cool stuff. Well, here's my last book. It is Donald's Craziest Adventures. So I had some of my best reads of the year. This is my funniest read of the year. This actually had me laughing out loud, legit, I guess. This is put out by Fantagraphics, and it is by Louis Trondheim and Keramidas. And they had a previous book called Mickey's Craziest Adventures that came out, and that was published by IDW. Hopefully that Fantagraphics will get the reprint of that. They do match up nice on the shelf. But the conceit of this is that Louis Trondheim and Keramidas did some garage sailing and came across this very small print run of Donald Duck comics that had only been published in one little region of Europe or something, never been widely released. So they were scrapping them together and piecing because some of them were damaged, some of them water damaged, some of them torn on the pages. They pieced them all together and then they released them in this book. That's all kayfabe and BS though, because they actually just drew a new story. But it's fun though, and that was I could see the Mickey Mouse one, and in that one they actually played to it to where like some of the panels were ripped off at the bottom, and like it played into the story. It was really kind of clever. But whether you're reading that because of that conceit or not, but I do want to show, because each page, if I can get to them, is done like a Sunday strip. Like, so you have like the top banner there, and then it reads like a Sunday strip where you have like the beginning, and then it ends on like a punchline, and then it ends on a punchline every single page. But throughout that, it's telling an ongoing story of Donald Duck going on this wild, happiest adventures. Did I say happiest adventures? That's what it's called. Oh, it's called Happiest Adventures. So he's having his happy adventures going on, and he's trying to find the true meaning of happiness throughout the whole story. So he's meeting all these different characters who are telling them their interpretation of what the true meaning of happiness is. And then I don't want to ruin the ending for you. But it was hilarious. Like the gags and the punchlines at the end of each page were just so fun. And then the artwork is amazing. These two together really do quite magical cartooning. The Mickey one was really good. I enjoyed it, but this one is what hooked me to where now I'm going to buy any of these fake kayfabed comics they find and scrap together. I hope they do more of these. I would definitely buy them. And it's a nice little tight, like 80-page slim hardcover. You can sit it down in one afternoon with a glass of lemonade and read it on a sunny afternoon and get a little bit of enjoyment out of it. But a lot of fun.
So is this the only way they release this book? Just
So far, yes, and this was, I think it was released in Europe first, maybe. But yeah, this is the only format it's been released, and probably will only be released. But it's got, I mean, it's only $16.99. It's a nice price on it.
I love the idea of like the fake book that they found. It reminds me of The Princess Bride, the novel.
Oh yeah.
And I hold that novel up as one of the coolest things I read, mostly for that idea. Like there's this fictional novel. Oh, I'm just retelling the good parts of this fake book that doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
Yeah. So the whole thing, and they even tell you like in the intro about when they found it, or like the comics they found. They even like have like these covers too. They tell the story, and they even end it with to those naughty spirits who claim that we are inventing yet again a cover story that Mickey's Craziest and Donald's Happiest are actually modern, newly created serials, we reply that it is vital to preserve one's childlike sense of fun. So it's kind of like, let's give up on trying to expose the Wizard of Oz and just have some fun with the story.
Well, that does sound like fun. And my final book, I mentioned I had my read of the year, and it was Thor by Jason Aaron. I've tried to get into Thor in the past, but I've never really been able to. And then with this Omni, I absolutely loved it throughout the whole thing. It's not the perfect Omni construction-wise, because it is like the first half of it's all very much in that era of writing for the trade. But what I found in reading through that is I was there for it. Like I loved it. I got to the end of that arc. I could very easily tell, okay, that's where that trade ended. But half a page into the next one, I was like, all right, let's do this. We're going through the next adventure or whatever. And they did link together, but it was very obvious that they were chapters of a story. And then the second half of the book, I think runs into two different like big crossover stories. So it starts getting a little weird, but there's enough in there that I didn't feel like I was missing anything. And I had fun with this from beginning to end, and really loved it. And from someone that was never able to get into Thor before, it was quite surprising for me to love it as much as I did.
So I had this omnibus too, and the first half I liked with the Russell Dodderman artwork, or no, the Isad Ribic artwork, because it felt like a heavy metal magazine comic. Like it's very European feeling in the way it was told, which is really cool.
Yeah, there were some throughout the book. I think there was like 2 or 3 different like single issue stories that were just like filler stories, and some of those had that same feel to it as well.
Yeah,
it's like a heavy metal feel.
So it kind of made the character feel in a different way, which I can see why you would enjoy it after not liking other previous Thor runs, because it kind of made it feel like a different company almost was making it. Does it make you want to read any more Thor though, besides Jason Aaron's run?
Well, I don't.
Like I know Volume 2 is coming out. Obviously, you'll probably read that, but
yeah. So I still need to do. I just finished this up a couple days ago, actually. So I haven't done any research on where to go from here. I was trying to wait until after I'd finished this, because I know like War of the Realm. I don't know if it takes place next or if that Volume 2 is.
The Volume 2 will contain War of the Realms.
Well, okay.
So if you want just the complete Jason Aaron Thor story, you just need Volume 2.
Okay.
If you want War of the Realms, the omnibus that came out separately includes all the tie-ins and stuff, which I heard a lot of those are good, but there's all the tie-ins and stuff. But the War of the Realms story will be in Volume 2. So you only need those 2.
So I'll probably, I'm interested in getting the Volume 2. I'll probably wait and just get that. As far as exploring Thor any more beyond that, I don't know. Like there's so much stuff that I want to read. I don't know if I want to get too deep into that. I'm so deep into certain things already that I'm trying to be cautious of like falling into too many different things where I have to collect everything of everything.
So what about like going back to the Kirby era? Do you think you'd be interested in that?
Probably not. I really liked what Jason Aaron did with because I've tried that stuff before and it never really stuck. And I don't know, it's like some of the concepts in here, I guess, were the more modern Thor ideas, like having the 3 Thors at the same time. I thought was super cool, and kind of getting the best of all worlds at the same time, type thing.
Yeah, I think the Kirby era with Stan Lee is kind of a daunting thing for some people because it has all the Shakespearean dialogue and whatnot, and Thor. And there's a little bit of that in here, but I think Jason Aaron did a great job of like modernizing it to where it's not so much seeped in that like you're not like, you don't feel like you're losing your mind trying to read in a whole different language almost. Like,
and in the past, that was definitely a big hurdle. Like trying to read a Thor, and I was like, oh, I just want to read about the character.
Yeah.
And when Jason Aaron did it in here, it was like much smaller snippets, but it felt like exciting. Like,
yeah.
So it was like, you know, 2 or 3 lines in this panel, 2 or 3 lines in this panel.
It wasn't so seeped in it, which is kind of like how the characters handled in his dialogue, at least in the MCU. I feel like it's like they have that in there, but it's not so much that it's like this guy stands out more than anything because he talks funny.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love Thor in the MCU? But the comedy elements weren't in here nearly as much as the MCU. But
have you seen Love and Thunder?
I have.
So how did you feel about the God Butcher in this story compared to Love and Thunder?
Well, I saw the movie first.
Okay.
So I saw the movie first, and I didn't think it was as bad as everybody said it was. And I was like, no, it was pretty good. You know, it wasn't great, but it was pretty good. And then after reading this, I was like, okay, I get it now.
You get why people are upset.
Because the God Butcher was so much cooler in the book.
Yeah, Love and Thunder was I didn't think it was as bad as everybody said either, but it's definitely handled better in the comic. Yes. So if you like Love and Thunder, I would definitely recommend reading this comic. You'd probably enjoy it like Brian did more.
Yeah, and I guess now that I know which book to buy next, I'm looking forward to that as well, because I know kind of where some of this stuff ends already. Then didn't get there in volume 1. So.
Yeah. Awesome.
So I know we normally do our pick of the month, and I kind of spoiled mine because this is my pick of the first half of the year. So what is your pick for the month?
That's a hard one. I think I'm going to go with Deadly Class. I think this only because Asterios Polyp and this will be probably my top 10 at the end of the year. But this, I feel like it was written for me. Like, you know, when you read those books and you're like, this was written directly for me. Like, I feel like Rick Remender got into my brain and said, this is the comic Taylor wants. And I think this will probably be reread by me more often than Asterios Polyp. But, just it has everything I want in comics. Like, that's all I can say is, like, everything I want in comics and that I enjoy from a good fiction story was in here. So,
awesome.
My pick of the month was Deadly Class.
Well, very cool. Thank you for joining me again. Those are the books we read this month. If you are interested in any of them, please comment down below. I'm sure we'll talk about them some more with you and have a little conversation going. But you don't have to take our word for these books.
You can visit your local comic book shop.
I think we got it right this time.
Finally. It only took us like 6 months.
Yeah.